All right, another video book review. This one is for Malazan, Book of the Fallen, Memories of Ice. That's book 3 by Steven Erikson. Wow. Wow. Best of 3 so far. Just right off the rip. Best of the 3 so far. It's been 6 months since I read Dead House Gates, and 6 months prior to that, I read Gardens of the Moon. So about a year since I've had these characters in my life. And it took me to a second, maybe a couple minutes to read a pretty in-depth kind of synopsis of the Gardens of the Moon. I didn't want to read Gardens of the Moon again just to read the third one, because I know putting those kind of roadblocks in front of me is just going to keep me from reading the series. So I just read a quick synopsis of the first book, kind of, you know, what is it, personas dramatis or whatever, the people who are important in that book. I reread who they were again just to kind of get up to speed, right? Anyways, that's about all I had. I didn't read it for Dead House Gates, and I ran into it because I knew we're not really dealing with that continent this time. Wow. Wow, oh wow. Again, just a fantastic book in the series for a lot of reasons. And my issues with the first book are kind of answered in a lot of ways by, not completely, but are answered with this one, where it felt far more paced better, driven, far more driven towards a goal, a lot clearer to the audience, to me. Much like the second book, where you had the whirlwind and you had all your point of views converging on the desert. In this book, all our characters are converging first on Capustan and then on Coral, the city of Coral. Now, I just as a kind of a brief little thing in the beginning here, it'll say in the, I guess the title or down, the title of this video, spoilers, because unlike other reviews I have, I want to start doing spoilers in the later entries of a series, because I don't know anyone who will be reading or watching this review for this book without having read the book. Like, that just seems like such a small audience that wouldn't be here. I think of myself, I wouldn't be doing that, right? So it just makes more sense to just do spoiler reviews for this. I saw that with Ramel Broadcasting, I think, is another booktuber who did this for Memories of Ice. And I have already done a review for this, and I make sure to do my own reviews before watching anyone else's, so they don't kind of destroy mine, or I'm feeling self-conscious about bringing the same stuff up. So anyways, I watched his, and he said that, and I said, wow, that makes a lot of sense. I should do that too. So thank you for giving me that permission, so to speak. Anyways, you have all your point of view characters converging, and you get a sense of, okay, this is what matters. This is kind of the main thrust of the book. So it feels like you're propelled towards something, and you can understand by looking at the map, you know, we're making progress, which I didn't get that on the first book. It kind of just felt like, oh, what's happening? What are the goals? Where are we going? Like, what's going on? And all the point of view characters were they did converge on Darujistan a little bit, but you know, others were going off other places, and I was fully like, I don't know what's going on in that book anyways. So I must have been just completely overwhelmed by that book. In this book, I was not overwhelmed. I feel like I knew the pace a lot better, and I feel also that Steven Erikson wrote in a way that, you know, was more clear to the reader, to me. There were a lot of points where he had two characters kind of sit down and talk about what's going on or what had just happened. And that, I didn't need them, thankfully, but I felt like it was very needed to kind of get some people back into it, to lower the bar just a little bit. I did see in some reviews, people were like, this is as confusing as the other books, and I don't think so. I think if you paid attention to what's being said, it's a lot clearer. There are still moments just like there are in the first two books, where like events are happening, or a character shows up, or a character's speaking, and you don't know who they are if you just pay attention to what's on the page. Like, you have to put together what's going on in the beginning of the book or middle or wherever, or from a different book entirely. And putting that together, A, it makes you feel like a detective when you put those kind of pieces together. And B, it rewards you. Like, you're like, okay, yeah, I did pay attention, and this is actually a really cool thing that's brought forward, and oh my gosh, that's such a cool callback, or wow, I didn't fully understand what was going on. I guess that's really cool that this is happening. Like, you get cool insights like that, and that's one of the joys of reading the series, is not having your hand held and getting those satisfactory moments. Really love that. I really also, I think I liked to loved every point of view and what that brought to the story. Like, whenever I was brought from the Bridge Burners and Whiskey Jack or Perrin over to Lady Envy and Talk the Younger and the Segula and Tool and all them, like, that was such a cool like a viewpoint on a different level of powers going on, and a different view of the world and the conflict, and different characters, and the characters were really cool. It was cool being introduced to the Segula and Envy. That was cool. But then you also had like Gruntle and his guys, which was like not as interesting, up to par with the others. It was still interesting, but not up to the same scale when it was just a caravan captain to this mysterious dude in the back. But it definitely, like, pretty quickly went up there when he started, when they got on the road and met with, what's his name? It's Corbin Broach and Brucalion, maybe, I think their names are. The necromancers. Like, once they met up there, like, that's when it really kicked off with their story, which was pretty early on. And the Kachane Shamail, I think is what they're called. That's when they showed up in the story. Very cool threat, made them very different. It wasn't just the Panyan Domin wasn't just an army of you know, city warriors with their citizens following behind as cannibals. It wasn't just that. It was also like these undead lizard folk from hundreds of thousands of years ago, which added another level of spice to this, like, cannibal Jagged led army, which was super interesting. But anyways, so you had that. You had now also our Malazan folks, like I mentioned before, who now also met up with our like Animander Rake, Corlat, who's a new character, I think, at least as a point of view, and then Caladan Brood and Calor, the ancient king, right? Who we saw a lot in the prologue. That was obviously very interesting. You have a lot of high power level characters messing with each other and having disagreements and all this. Very interesting. Silver Fox was brought in, Tattersail, Reborn, Nightchill, Bellardan, who I don't remember too well, these guys and gals, but I do remember Tattersail. But all that, and Silver Fox's character being another piece of flavor to this mess, who's sucking the life force from her mother, Mybe. Very interesting stuff. Very interesting. I didn't like Silver Fox for obviously that reason, and she kept all the cards to her chest, and I didn't like that, and obviously, you know, it caused almost all of the problems that came along with her and the Talani Mas and the Mybe and Call and Murillo and everything that came from that was because she kept all the cards to her chest, which I hated. But, you know, that's life. That's part of the story. Anyways, we have those characters, that was such an interesting, Whiskey Jack and Dujek One Arm in that mix was just super interesting as well. That was bound to be interesting, right? But having all the side point of views were as interesting or even more interesting. Like with the Grey Swords is, I think, the final one with Itkovian and all that. That was a bit confusing in the beginning, just trying to keep everyone together in my mind, like Brucalion and Itkovian, and there was another one. They were all the high ups in the Grey Swords, and sooner rather than later, like, you can kind of forget all of them, but Itkovian, and his story was very unique and interesting and very religious, very, very religious, where you can take on the weight of a people, of a race at the end there. That was something else entirely, but very interesting point of views. All that coalescing around Kapustan, the Siege of Kapustan, which was such an interesting, one of the coolest sieges. It was quick and bloody. Very interesting. Cool to see how our characters kind of became. A lot of our characters, that's the fire in which they, like, were made from, their final form, so to say. Gruntle came from that. Stunny. You saw the Necromancers in action, which was cool again. And then that's where Itkovian, that's where he kind of made his name in the book as well. And you get a lot of that. Forge them in that fire to then meet, you know, the Malazan army and then all the rest, Animander Rake and the Caladan Brood. It was very good to temper these new characters in this crazy siege to then meet with our main force to then go all the way to Coral together, basically. That was super interesting, I thought, as well. And I also, so again, the story was great. I really liked, like I said, that it was a lot cleaner story, a lot clearer to understand. The magical stuff was through the mind of, and through the, I guess, viewpoint mainly of Quick Ben. Like, that was a lot of the magical stuff. And it was a lot clearer with Quick Ben being there because he understood things, he explained things, and he explained things to, you know, other characters who tagged along or whatever. So it was a lot clearer. You understood. You can't understand everything about Warrens this early on in the series. Maybe it'll reveal itself a bit more as we go on, but it was as clear as it needed to be. I wasn't sitting there like, I obviously missed something. Like, I understood what was being said and what I needed to know at that point. What I do want to say, it was great having Quick Ben. What I did not like, and I just refuse to like him, he gets worse every time I see him, is Ganos Perrin. I'll call him Perrin. He is a robot. He is a robot with no emotions, and I think that is my biggest, not just Perrin or Perrin. I have that problem with the series in general so far, which so much is happening. You have so many characters and all this that you just feel a little bit disconnected from these characters. You're not as embedded with the characters as you would in other books, where you don't feel as empathetic towards them. You're not sharing their grief, their happiness, all that with them as much. You're a bit zoomed out a little bit with these characters. So that's a problem I have, which bleeds into like Whiskey Jack dying at the end, our bridge burners basically almost wiped out completely to a man. Even really happy things that happen for our characters, sometimes, not often. You don't feel their triumphs and their all that as much as you would in other books, because you do have that standoffish nature with these characters. So I would say my emotional attachment to a lot of these characters are lessened. Not completely gone, I'm not saying that. It's lessened than I would want. Less than I would want. And Ganos Perrin is awful. He's the worst. He is the absolute worst about this. To kind of illustrate my point, he is told here in this by, I think it was Dujek One Arm or Whiskey Jack, hey, by the way, there's been a revolt in the 7 cities. Your parents, I think, killed themselves, and your sister has been taken hostage or made a slave and sent to these terrible mines, the Atutteral mines, that have a huge reputation for awfulness. He knew about them too. It wasn't just, oh, I guess she's gonna be in a mine or something. No, he knew about them and how bad it was. But all this is going on. His other sister betrayed them, all this kind of stuff. And in that moment, he's very like stoic and, okay, we're gonna keep moving on. And I can forgive that, where it's like, yeah, I'm gonna give this guy some time. Maybe it takes a second for him for the emotions to kick in. Maybe he's trying to stay strong in the moment and wait for a future time where he can release that emotion. Maybe when we get into his mind, we can figure out what's going on with this. Well, the very next time we're in his point of view and hearing his thoughts, nothing, crickets. Doesn't matter. It's like he was never told that. And then throughout the book, you even have him, reference it like once, maybe, like reference what happened, and he's just like, well, I hope Ellison's all right. What is this? Like, is this a human being? I don't want to read about this guy. If this is, I don't want to root for him. I don't care about him. Like, what kind of lizard person is this that is, yes, he's dealing with the problems of command. Yes, he's the master of the deck or whatever, but it's family, dude. It's a realistic, to me, set of conflicts would be having to juggle those things, master the deck, and having problems with leading, and then also just being weighed down by this revelation that his family is decimated, like terrible stuff. And there's no explanation on why he wouldn't be feeling that way, right? At all. So it just came off as strange to me. Super strange. Anyways, that's enough for Gano's parent. The more I talk about this, the less my praise, seems praiseworthy. Or I really enjoyed this book. Like, it was great. Absolutely great. Between reading sessions, which I tried to read as much as I could for this book as quickly as I could because I was enjoying it so much. But obviously life comes in the way. But during those moments of life where I'm driving, I'm doing other things, I'm thinking about this book. I'm thinking about the characters and, what have they gone through? I can't wait till they do this. What's going to happen when these guys meet? Thinking about the history of the Talani Mass and the Jagged, which became far more clear in this book. Like, I had problems in the first book in keeping the two straight and why they're different and all that. Well, after the second and now this, they're far more cemented in my mind. So I loved that. I thought about it. A sign of a great book is if you're just thinking about it, between reading sessions. If you're thinking about it and after you finish a book, you're thinking about it a lot, like, that's a sign of a great book and a book that sticks with you, right? Anyways, I loved it. I loved it for that. I love the battle scenes, like the most epic scenes you'll get in anything ever. Like, it's on the level of epic as stuff you'd see in the Silmarillion of things that are happening. And this is explained in more detail, and it's just a different writing style and narrative style than the Silmarillion. But it is like on that level of epicness and more in some facets. So it's pretty great to see that. And I see a lot of people put Malazan as like, hey, this is the final boss of fantasy. Like, this series here, if you finish Wheel of Time, great. That was like training wheels for Malazan, that kind of vibe, right? And I get what they're saying, because it's like getting on a roller coaster, and it's one of those roller coasters that goes from 0 to 60 as soon as you leave the gates, right? Boom. That's how it feels reading any of these books. And in the first book, that happens, and you're thrown in, and that's why a lot of people bounce off. A lot of people bounce off of because there is no mercy, and you're expected to know things. Things are being referred to as if you know them, kind of thing. So that's where the issue is for a lot of people. But the joy most other people find is being submerged in it and figuring out along the way, and just accepting things. And so it feels like a roller coaster as you go, and having to try to hold on to things as the roller coaster speeds up. And okay, I remember this event so that I can in the future have it referenced and I get it, like that kind of stuff. So it still feels that way, and I think it did that roller coaster vibe a lot better than the other two books. It just does it more clean. And I love that about it. I love the epicness. And what I mean by that is it is a difficult thing to read, for sure. And it does have this lore, this history. You should definitely compare it to Lord of the Rings in its complexity and its deep lore. And that comes from me, who I love. I think my favorite lore of all time is Middle-earth lore, is Silmarillion lore. Tolkien lore, right? That's my favorite stuff. For years, I have not cared about the maps in fantasy novels. I have not, because it doesn't matter to me. It all pales in comparison to Middle-earth and the maps, and I've just got that map cemented in my mind as like, okay, that's the map. And this is the only series that's come up. Wheel of Time came up a little bit, but after a while, I was like, whatever. It doesn't matter that much. But with this, it is okay, let me reference the map. Let's see where they're at. How close are they to Coral, like this kind of stuff? Where is Kapustan? How far are they from, the Malaz city? Or, oh, maybe that's a different continent. Oh my God. And then figuring that out is very cool. Feels good again. I like that. I had like a 20-year break from learning and obsessing over Middle-earth to finally getting a new map to try to understand and get. Like, that's cool. And the lore is deep, and it feels like with Lord of the Rings, while you're reading Lord of the Rings, you get mentions of the epic events that happened in the Silmarillion in ages past. You get mentions of it. But the epicness is kind of left to history with only slight echoes of it here and there. With this series, it's not in the past. Like, the epic stuff is happening. It happened, and now you have even more epic things happening all the time. You have elder races just showing up. You have massive magical things happening and world-changing events and gods coming through and like Finir coming into this plane of existence, and gods coming down and affecting things, and all that stuff is happening now. So it definitely adds to the complexity of what's going on. It makes the deep lore come to the fore and enhances the story that way. So it's a different way of handling lore in both of them, and there's merits to both, but it is a good comparison between the two on being like, okay, no, these are the best lores that you can have in all of fantasy so far. And it feels that way for sure, because it feels deep. And I'm sure Steven Erikson, from what I heard, he either was an archaeologist or that's a huge hobby of his, and you can feel his deep understanding of it, and the adding on of to the story, like the shifting of landscapes through time and layers, like going down in geological layers and finding things and seeing that the world was different through that. Like, you didn't get that with Tolkien. You get that here, where it's literally geographical changes that you can see through like layers of the earth and how they're different, and changes in the world over time, which you get in Tolkien, that the world changes physically, but it's not as concrete as in Malazan. And I don't want this to be a Malazan versus Lord of the Rings thing. I'm just saying it's this so far it seems that Malazan is a good comparison to Lord of the Rings in so many aspects. And I thought the prose that Steven Erikson has is next level. It's not just craftsman-like, good to go. It's next level, top tier, second to, or on the same level, honestly, as a GGK and Tolkien in a lot of ways, in so many ways. It isn't like musical like those two, but it's well crafted. It is, the words, unless you're using preternatural like a million times, like Steven Erikson loves to do, like everything else, like he's a very varied grammatical lexicon of to draw upon. So I thought that was incredibly rewarding to read. I'm learning new words too. Like, that's like preternatural. What kind of word is that? So that was really cool. What else, dude? It's a funny book. It's a funny book. These books are surprisingly funny. Dead House Case Less So, that was just dour most of the time, except for that one character. Go watch the review. The guy stuck in the tower, like the priest of something. I forget what he was, but he was hilarious. Krupp is in this book still. From the first book, I thought he was hilarious in the first book. I think he's less funny in this book for sure. There's like one or two times where I chuckled, but that was it. He's got a lot of lines in this book. I thought where the real humor was our characters interacting with the Mott irregulars. They are new. I think they might have been mentioned before, but I think they're new to this book, and they're just like hayseed country bumpkins who are somehow in this army, and they have a force there that are considered like the most dangerous in the army, of the mercenaries and on the scattered folk that are in the army. They're considered the toughest in the Caladan Brood army. And you don't really get it when you're talking with them because they seem like idiots, but they're hilarious when they speak, and you can tell underneath it there's an intelligence there, which is shown through by their deadliness, right? In battle, they're actually deadly, but you don't see them do it. You only kind of hear about it. And they like fought the Malazan forces to a standstill in their homeland. Like, that takes a lot. So they must be pretty crazy good at what they're doing. So I want to see them more, not only for their humor, but for how good they are. And it seems like everyone's got a power level that's incredible. So it's very cool also to mentally try to place the power levels in your mind. Okay, what you feel like a kid again. What if these guys fought these guys, and how would they do? Like that kind of thing. That happens in these books, so that's pretty cool. You see the Segula fight Tool, and Tool beats I don't know their numbers, but number 7 I think is one of them, and another one, and he's able to beat them handily. But number three Mock beats Tool, and you're like, and it doesn't seem that difficult. And even Tool says to his sister, "Do you understand? This guy isn't, like, don't kill this guy, because it doesn't matter. There's still a second and a first who destroy this guy. So there's no hope of me being the best anymore." Because there's a whole thing about, as you know, if you've read the book, like the first sword of the Talani Mas or whatever needs to be the best. Like, it's a whole thing. But he lost. But I blabber on for sure. It's fantastic in almost every way, minus Perrin and to a wider extent, the aloofness you get from a lot of these characters, to the point where when Whiskey Jack died, I didn't care that much. I was like, oh, okay. I liked him. Too bad he's gone. Should have got that leg fixed. Bummer. I also wanted to say, most unexpected character that I enjoyed and I want to see more of, and I have been rooting for him for whatever reason, is Calor, the one who killed Whiskey Jack. He just seems like a crotchety old man who is way past his due-by date, sees these youngsters who are very confident in making their own decisions, but he's like, no, this guy, Silver Fox is a problem. We should not allow this to happen. And I think during the book, I also did not like Silver Fox. I was like, okay, she's got these deeper plans, but like she seems like a mean, not good person, and that comes from like all these problems of all these like souls inside of her, probably like warring, but also being still a kid because she's growing up so quick, like she's jumping years in weeks kind of thing. So you can kind of see the childish nature of her, but in a grown woman's body, and you can kind of forgive a little bit, but then again, I'm really not. I'm not forgiving enough where I'm like, come on, Silver Fox, please just go away, go do what you're supposed to do. Stop being so, you know, high, better, what is it, holier than thou to a lot of people in what you're talking about. You're not explaining anything, right? Bad characteristic there, and she paid for it. She didn't explain, and she paid for it. But while Calor like spent the entire book saying, guys, we need a killer, what are we doing? And then people are like stepping in front of her because they see her as Tatter Sailor. They still see her as a little girl. And as she gets older and meaner, they're questioning her like, oh, is Killer right? Like, maybe, is she dangerous? Like, did we miss our chance? Like, and that happens, and I'm smiling the whole time. And then Calor's just funny in a lot of ways. And I thought him turning was very justified. Like, it wasn't the Silver Fox thing where everyone's saying, no, don't kill her. And he's like, no, we need to kill her. So he turned not only because of that, but he's just not liked by anyone. He's disrespected by everyone. Like, people kind of push him away. And it's like, at some point, it's like, well, F you guys. I'm going to join the guy who wants me, and I'm going to kill all of you. Like, that's the feeling I get. And I almost cheered him on when he took that, like took the hand of the chain god, the crippled god, in a way. Sucks he killed Whiskey Jack. I know a lot of people love him, but I'm not, like, I didn't feel any kind of connection to him other than him being a cool, wiser kind of guy who seemed to have a really good head on his shoulders. Other than that, like, I wasn't emotionally connected with him. I think my favorite characters for sure, though, so far, Quick Ben, great character. I love him. He's funny. He can obviously back up what he's talking about, and there's still a lot of mystery to what he's doing. He's a good entry point into the Warrens and seeing his power levels and all that. I do like Animator Rake, but only because he's kind of cool. But like, I don't have these personal connections with these people, so I don't. Obviously, I want them to beat the Panyan Doman, right? Because terrible eating people and doing what they've done to cities and all that. Someone's calling me. All right, this is maybe a week on from the finish of my review of Memories of Ice, and I had a phone call at the end, as you saw there. I think it just cut to this. Hopefully my editing skills, you might imagine, are not great, but hopefully I can do that. And anyways, I just needed another chance to finish this video. It's a week later, as I said, and you know, I still think the book is great. Like, I think I was talking about the characters, and the characters are all enhanced from the first book. I can't remember exactly what I was talking about, and I should go back and watch a little bit, but the best I can remember is I was talking about the characters, and they're still superb, but weak, a little bit weak in the characterization that I see. I think I saw there was a Daniel Green video years ago about Steven Erikson had a reply on people saying like, hey, he's pretty weak at characterization, this, that, and the other, which I think I remember seeing years ago. I don't remember anything about it, so I might have to give that a watch. But it's true, like how I'm seeing it, how I'm reading it compared to other things, and even looking at I think I compared it to the Jade City book, which is a weaker book, but it's tight. It's a tight book, really well done. One of my favorites of the year so far. And the characters are just so deep and so in your face, memorable. Think of like a Red Rising. Crazy great on characters. That's like the best thing about that series is the pace, but B, the characters. Like that, it's just such a fantastic character book where you're remembering these characters years later. Like I remember in Jade City, I can remember Hilo very well. I can remember Lan very well. The sister, what's her name? Shay? I can't remember her name super well, but I can remember vividly in my mind the picture I had of them and how they walked through life and their struggles and their feelings and this, that, and the other. And that really brought intensity and also like excitement coming to a scene where I was like, okay, these characters are going to meet. How is that going to go down? You know, a long awaited meeting between characters that you'd seen apart. Now it's cool to see them together. I didn't get that. You get that a lot in Red Rising. You get that a lot in really cool books. You get that, The Fateful and the Fallen. I remember that being a huge part of that book. Like the characters are just fantastic, vivid in your mind, and characters meeting, especially that sprawling, you know, that sprawling narrative. You know, think of a Game of Thrones, epic fantasy where you have all these point of views and disparate locations coming together, and you know, that's where a lot of the joy is. You don't get that here very much. Like it's cool seeing that in Memories of Ice, where these characters, you know, from all these different, you know, plot lines kind of meet and deal with each other, but it isn't as interesting, as cool, as, you know, as you'd want with something as epic like this, because the characterization does feel weaker, doesn't feel as the focus of the story. It just doesn't feel like Steven Erikson focuses much on that. It's more like the characters are there to serve as a way of bringing the lore and the epic nature of the story to light. It isn't so much the deep understanding of the characters and trying to, you know, bring that to the reader themselves and have the reader digest that and all. It's all mostly surface level, it feels like. But you know, that's what I can think of it as I read it. And a week later, the same thing. Like, can I do a deep dive in my mind of Whiskey Jack's characteristics, his flaws, his hopes, his dreams? You know, in the book you get like, oh, he wants to, you know, retire to a mountain somewhere kind of thing. But like, other than that, you don't get too much on that. You don't get the bridge burners. You don't get that on many of these characters. You don't get that. So without understanding the driving nature of these characters to a T, that should be done at a higher level, I can't really rate that part of the book very highly. So because of that, I think my rating is going to be like at a 9, because everything else is done superbly, but that it's a clear 9 and could go up in my memory as we go forward, because these are stellar books. They're just deep and crazy compelling, but they don't last in your mind. Let's say the punches, the things that last are like set pieces, epic, you know, the fortress crashing into the city, you know, like breaking out of the water and crashing into the city, you know, these soul taken fights, all this kind of stuff. That is what sticks in your mind, the set pieces. But if I think of a Red Rising, let's say, I know I'm always using Red Rising. I'm reading it at the same time right now. I'm finishing the trilogy, or I just finished the trilogy, actually. That's the next book I finished, was Morning Star, which I'll do a review probably shortly. The meetings are just epic. I'm thinking of in Morning Star, which is this is a spoiler for Morning Star. Not a big one, actually, but it's just having Cassius and Darrow sitting down and having a conversation. That's a huge piece, memorable piece that I've remembered on every read, really looking forward to, or whatever, whoever the characters are, and having these characters sit down and just talk. Not only is the dialogue great, but the characters have been built up in such a way that you want them to, you know, you want that redemption, you want them to hash it out, or you just want to see them pick each other's brains, you know, that kind of stuff. Like that's, if you've seen Heat, the movie, having those De Niro and Pacino sitting down at that diner, that scene is so compelling and so memorable to so many people, because it is the meeting of these two characters that have been built up, and you have them being titans in their scenes and being so impactful character-wise in their own scenes and their own storylines. And when they finally meet, it has such meaning, because they're, you know, facing each other as adversaries, but you know that there's probably a respect there, and then there's a lot of tension in the scene because they are, you know, after each other. It's a compelling scene. It's such a beautiful scene too, and a overall okay, good movie, but those kind of scenes are where it's at. Or I think of even a Goon, you know, Goon, the movie, with a hockey movie, with the guy, Stifler from American Pie, that actor, funny guy, right? He's in the hockey movie. It's a funny movie, very different. But having our main character, who's kind of a simpleton, but he's compelling, got a lot of heart, meeting with Liv Schreiber, who's this cutthroat veteran hockey player, having them meet in the diner like Heat. Even in a movie like Goon, which is like a silly scene or a silly movie, this is a very impactful scene that has some funny parts, but it plays it seriously. And a lot of the impact comes from these characters being built up and us caring about both of them in such a way. And it then has echoes throughout the rest of the movie. But you don't get that kind of stuff. I'm long-winded. You don't get that kind of stuff in this series that I've seen so far. And I think that is a super downer, because I think of Wheel of Time. I'm coming out with all these, but this is kind of you know, just my thoughts a week later. But I think of Wheel of Time, where I think the story itself is so much weaker. The epic nature of it's epic, but it's so much weaker than Malazan in like so many levels. Like I do not like that series when I think back on it. Like half of that series sucks. But the characters are strong. The characters are so strong. They're the part of the book that make me hate it so much, because the characters are let down by the story beats and by where they're put. But the core characters themselves in the first couple books and how they're being built and how much you care about them is just fantastic. A lot of not all of them, right? But a lot of them are like that. The main core, like Matt, Perrin, and Rand, like that trio there, they're so compelling and so impactful in their scenes, and you think about them years later and you understand, you know, in a gut level, their emotions, their feelings, what drives them. I don't get that with Whiskey Jack. I don't get that with Perrin, Ganos Perrin. Hate that guy. But anyways, I waxed ineloquently about that long enough. It's a 9 out of 10. I hope this finished my review. This is kind of like a reset on me. So I could again talk about this for another 20-30 minutes, just ramble as I draw, you know, examples from different places, but I don't want to do that. I'm on to a different review after this. But yeah, it could be better, it could be a lot better, but every other aspect of this book is fantastic. So because of that, I can't give it anything over a 9 now that I think about it. So 9 out of 10 on the next book.